Hello and welcome to Fireside Fairytales. My name is Rory and you are watching Varietal Literature's YouTube channel, a cozy little corner of the internet for narrative. What we're going to do here tonight is talk about, read some folklore and fairy tales, as the name promises. And if you've never been here before, you should know that if you're watching live, there's a live chat humming right now. A little crop of potatoes growing there, talking about everything from pipe tobacco to heart stents. If you are, however, not watching this live, if you're watching this as a video on demand, down in the description below there will be timestamps and you can jump ahead to the stories that are interesting to you. Both stories concern tree-chewing witches in some regards, so you can either one will satisfy the thumbnail there. Just need to check something on my mic. Is that any better? Yeah, that's a little better. I think I maybe bumped some settings. All right. There's a lot in the chat, so I won't be able to address it all as I usually do, because something I should say at the front here is I think it's about 8 bazillion degrees where I live right now. I live in Vancouver, and Vancouver is a rainforest, so not only is it very hot right now, it is also very, very humid. It's about 30 degrees Celsius, which I think is like 85 degrees Fahrenheit or something, but it's also like 40 to 50% humidity because we got some rain pushing in. So it's the kind of heat that just hugs you and is impossible to escape. So that's where I'm at. As a result, the stream will be a little shorter and a little more to the point, or at least that's the goal. So I won't be able to get to everything, but what I will say is I hear that Jumpstore is having a hard time at the bakery. I certainly hope that gets resolved soon. And I hear that things have gone a little bit better for Uncle Kitty, and I'm really glad to hear that. I know you've had some rough times, and I see that Worming Hall has a new pipe and some very good tobacco. What's your new pipe made of? My grandfather used to smoke pipe tobacco, so I have fond memories of it, even though it was part of the thing that got him. In the end, I just realized my art is missing. My holder has fallen down. Alright, well, something tells me she's not going to stay. I wonder if that's just the humidity. Because it could be. Worming Hall and Uncle Kitty are talking about why does it not smell as bad. That's because, cigarettes are basically, you know, the butts and bits and ends of tobacco mishmashed together with whatever extends it. Whereas stuff like that, whole leaf stuff, is going to have more of a like organic campfire kind of smell to it. Okay. Well, as I mentioned, it's 37,000 degrees here. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I'll just say this very briefly, my sort of concept here as I was looking over stories this week. We're going to continue reading Russian fairy tales, a choice collection of Muscovite folklore. What we're going to look at is 2 tales, one a little short, one a little longer, one very familiar. You'll recognize pretty quickly what tradition it pulls from, because a lot of cultures have a version of it. But interestingly enough, in neither of these are they called Baba Yaga, or do they seem to make reference to a lot of the keystone Baba Yaga traits. Now, they might still be regarded as a Baba Yaga story, because that's how folklore is. Folklore is high variability. But what I'm really interested in looking at is these stories that don't really have necessarily the Baba Yaga traits, because that is easily the most famous Russian hag or witch. Um, but uh, um, how do I want to put that? You know my thing, that I don't want to be too reductive, because even though Russian folklore does, as far as I can tell, tend to be a little more consistent, and there's some historical reasons for that, I think. It's always broad geographic ranges and broad spans of time. Also, is it really hot where you are? Because it is really hot here. Let's pretend it's not. Let's put on some wind and rain and imagine that the misty day on the moors. Our first tale of the night is called The Witch. It comes to us from Russian Fairy Tales, a choice collection of Muscovite folklore, which is an older collection that you can find for free on Gutenberg.org. There once lived an old couple who had one son called Ivashko. No one can tell how fond they were of him. Well, one day Ivashko said to his father and mother, "I'll go out fishing if you'll let me." "What are you thinking about? You're still very small. Suppose you get drowned, and what good will there be in that?" Nah, I shan't get drowned. I'll catch you some fish. Do let me go." So his mother put a white shirt on him and tied a red girdle round him and let him go. And out in a boat he sat and said, "Canoe, canoe, float a little farther. Canoe, canoe, float a little farther." And then the canoe floated on farther and farther, and Ivashko began to fish. And when some little time had passed by, the old woman hobbled down to the riverside and called to her son, "Ivashko, Ivashko, my boy, float up onto the waterside. I bring thee food and drink." And Ivashko said, "Canoe, canoe, float to the waterside. That is my mother calling me." The boy floated to the shore, and the woman took the fish and gave her boy food and drink, changed his shirt for him and his girdle, and sent him back to his fishing. And again he sat in his boat and said, "Canoe, canoe, float a little farther. Canoe, canoe, float a little farther." And the canoe floated on farther and farther, and Ivashko began to fish. And after a little time had passed by, the old man also hobbled down to the bank and called to his son, "Ivashko, Ivashko, my boy, float up onto the waterside. I bring thee food and drink." And Ivashko replied, "Canoe, canoe, float to the waterside. That is my father calling me." The canoe floated to the shore. The old man took the fish, gave his boy food and drink, changed his shirt for him and his girdle, and sent him back fishing. Now, a certain witch had heard what Ivashko's parents had cried aloud to him, and she longed to get a hold of the boy. So she went down to the bank and cried with a hoarse voice, "Ivashko, Ivashko, my boy, float up onto the waterside. I bring thee food and drink." Well, Ivashko perceived that the voice was not his mother. but was that of a witch, and he sang, "Canoe, canoe, float a little farther. Canoe, canoe, float a little farther. That is not my mother, but a witch who calls me." And the witch saw that she must call Ivashko with just such a voice as his mother had. So she hastened to a smith and said to him,
"Smith, smith, make me just such a thin little voice as Ivashko's mother has, and if you don't, I'll eat you."
So the smith forged her a little voice, just like Ivashko's mother's. And then the witch went down by the night to the shore and sang,
"Ivashko, Ivashko, my boy, float up onto the water side. I bring thee food and drink."
Well, Ivashko came, and she took the fish, and she seized the boy, and carried him home with her. And when she arrived, she said to her daughter Alenka,
"Heat the stove as hot as you can, and bake Ivashko as well. While I go and collect my friends for the feast."
And so Alenka heated the stove hot, ever so hot. And said to Ivashko,
"Come here and sit on this shovel."
"I'm very young and foolish," answered Ivashko. "I haven't yet quite got my wits about me. Please teach me how one ought to sit on a shovel."
"Very good,"
said Alenka.
"Won't take long to teach you."
The moment she sat down on the shovel, Ivashko instantly pitched her into the oven, slammed the iron plate in front of it, which I suspect is a familiar trope, and ran out of the hut, shut the door, and hurriedly climbed up ever so high an oak tree, which stood by close. Well, presently the witch arrived with her guests, knocked at the door of the hut, but nobody opened it for her.
"Ah, that cursed Alenka!" she cried. "No doubt she's gone off somewhere to amuse herself."
And then she slipped in through the window, opened the door, and let in her guests. They all sat down to the table, and the witch opened the oven and took out Alenka's baked corpse and served it up. And they all ate their fill and drank their fill. And then they went out into the courtyard and began rolling about on the grass.
"I turn about, I roll about, having fed on Ivashko's flesh,"
cries the witch.
"I turn about, I roll about, having fed on Ivashko's flesh."
But Ivashko called out to her from the top of the oak, "Turn about, roll about, having fed on Alenka's flesh."
"Did I hear something?" said the witch. "No, it was only the noise of the leaves."
And again the witch began,
"I turn about, I roll about, having fed on Ivashko's flesh."
and Ivashko repeated, "Turn about and roll about, having fed on Alenka's flesh." Why is he talking? Just get out of the tree and leave. You won. Anyways, then the witch looked up and saw Ivashko, and immediately rushed at the oak which Ivashko was seated and began to gnaw away at it. And she gnawed and gnawed and gnawed until at last she smashed her 2 front teeth. And then she ran to a forge, and when she reached it, she cried,
Smith! Smith! Make me some iron teeth. If you don't, I'll eat you.
And so the smith forged her 2 iron teeth. And the witch returned and began gnawing the oak again. That would have been a good opening to run away, Vashko, I'm just saying. And she gnawed and gnawed and was on the point of gnawing it through when Ivashko jumped out of it into another tree which stood beside it. The oak that the witch had gnawed through fell to the ground, but then she saw that Ivashko was sitting up in another tree, so she gnashed her teeth with spite and set to work afresh to gnaw that tree also. And she gnawed and gnawed and gnawed and broke 2 lower teeth and ran off to the forge. Smith! She cried when she got there.
Make me some iron teeth. If you don't, I'll eat you.
And so the smith forged 2 more iron teeth for her. And she went back again and once more began to gnaw the oak. Ivashko didn't know what he was to do now. He looked out and saw that swans and geese were flying by, and so he called to them imploringly. Oh, my swans and geese, take me on your pinions, bear me to my father and mother, to the cottage of my father and my mother, there to eat and drink and live in comfort. Let those in the center carry you, said the birds, and Ivashko waited, and a second flock flew past, and he again cried imploringly, Oh, my swans and geese, take me on your pinions, bear me to my father and my mother, to the cottage of my father and my mother, there to eat and drink and live in comfort. Let those in the rear carry you, said the bird, and again Ivashko waited, and a third flock came flying up, and again he cried, Oh, my swans and geese, take me on your pinions, bear me to my father and my mother, to the cottage of my father and my mother, there to eat and drink and live in comfort. And those swans and geese took a hold of him and carried him back, flew up to the cottage and dropped him in the upper room. And early the next morning his mother set to work to bake pancakes, baked them, and all of a sudden fell to thinking about her boy. Where is my Ivashko? She cried. Would that I could see him, were it only in a dream. And then his father said, I dreamed that swans and geese had brought our Ivashko home on their wings. And when she had finished baking the pancakes, she said, Now then, old man, let's divide the cake. There's for you, father, there's for me. There's for you, father, there's for me. Can you imagine if somebody just announced everything when they were serving? Well, that's 1 potato for you. 1 potato for me. And none for me, called out Ivashko. There's for you, father, went on the old woman, and there's for me, and none for me. Why, old man, said the wife, go and see whatever that is up there. And the father climbed up into the upper room, and there he found Ivashko. And the old people were delighted, asked their boy about everything that had happened, and after that he and they lived on happily together. What a truly weird story. Like, it's one of those stories where, like, it isn't, like, really garishly weird. It's not super obviously weird. But it just, there's so many subtle oddities in it. Why doesn't he run away? Why does the smith keep making teeth for her when her threat is eating him and she doesn't have teeth? Like, I feel like she's disarmed. It's like, you better make me a gun or I'll shoot you. Like, it's that. By the way, if you think it's odd that someone would go to a blacksmith and ask them for outright magical stuff, that's kind of a thing in folklore. It seems to be a reflection of real sort of almost suspicions of the time, where people did not understand how blacksmiths could do some of the things they did, and so it was sometimes theorized that they were in league with the devil or something else. We've seen stories like that on this channel before. Lizzie Rose says, yeah, I was wondering what the witch has on the Smith. I mean, the threat, I think, is supposed to explain it, but when she shows up with no teeth, that's not much of a threat. Wow, it's hot. It's one of those things where it just feels like someone is breathing on your face, like here. Okay. The next one's a bit longer. I think it's more obviously mythological in origin, if that makes sense. You'll see what I mean. It reads like maybe a pagan tale reframed or at least inspired by it, because it is it's interesting. Music stopped. You'll see what I mean. I won't talk about it too much, but this one definitely has elements to it. It also has a lot of weirdness in a similar way where it's not always obvious. It's not quite as incoherent as the last one. It doesn't bother to explain just about anything, so don't get your hopes up that something's going to come together or explain it in the end. And it has, I'm going to say, top 5 least expected endings I've ever seen. Utterly bizarre ending. I don't even know if it's like a bad one exactly, but it is not at all what you think is going to happen. Our next tale and our final tale of the night is called The Witch and the Sun's Sister, and it also comes to us from Russian Fairy Tales, a choice collection of Muscovite folklore. In a certain far-off country, there once lived a king and a queen, and they had an only son, Prince Ivan, who was dumb from his birth. Just a note on that. In this era, this is probably about 19th century, this translator's writing, dumb means like they didn't speak much, if at all. They didn't just mean like he's stupid. And in fact, as the story goes on, it doesn't seem that he was stupid. One day, when he was 12 years old, he went into the stable to see a groom who was a great friend of his. The groom always used to tell him tales, and on this occasion the Prince Ivan went to him expecting to hear some stories, but that wasn't what he heard. Now, I'm lucky enough, I gotta pause here for a second, I'm lucky enough to know someone who is from Russia and a native speaker of Russian, and I noticed that the translator here, if you're not watching the video, if you're listening to this as a podcast, you wouldn't know this, but next to tales and next to stories, they put the word in square brackets, skaski, I'm sure I'm not saying that right, and skazotchi, something to that effect. And normally, when a translator does that, it's to indicate a sort of subtlety of meaning that isn't going to come across in the translation. But then the translator doesn't explain why. So I asked them, I was like, what subtlety is being missed here? This is fairy tales. So this sentence read again, maybe more specifically, would be, the groom always used to tell him fairy tales, or sort of tall tales. And on this occasion, Prince Ivan went to him expecting to hear such fabulous tales. But that wasn't what he heard. In other words, he heard a tale that was more realistic and grounded. Carrying on. Prince Ivan, said the groom, Prince Ivan, said the groom, your mother will soon have a daughter, and you a sister. But she will be a terrible witch, and she will eat up her father and her mother, and all their subjects. So go and ask your father for the best horse he has, as if you wanted a gallop, and then if you want to be out of harm's way, ride away whithersoever your eyes guide you. Very interesting proposal here, somebody who's born a witch. I don't think I've ever seen that before. But I'm sure if you have, you'll let me know in the chat or maybe the comments. I'm curious, have you ever seen that before? Prince Ivan ran off to his father, and for the first time in his life began speaking to him. Sorry, just having an issue with my son music here. Prince Ivan ran off to his father, and for the first time in his life began speaking to him. At that, the king was so delighted that he never thought of asking what he wanted a good steed for, but immediately ordered the very best horse he had in his stud to be saddled for the prince. Prince Ivan mounted and rode off without caring where he went, and long, long did he ride. And at length he came to where two old women were sewing, and he begged them to let him live with them. To let him live with them. Yes, I said that right. But they said,
"Gladly we would do so, Prince Ivan. Only we have now but a short time to live. As soon as we have broken that trunk full of needles, and used up that trunk full of thread, that instant will death arrive."
and Prince Ivan burst into tears and rode on. And long, long did he ride, and at length he came to where the giant Vertidub was, and he besought him, saying, well, you're saying, Rory, what is a Vertidub? So I think I'm going to have to go to the footnote for that, because I would have never known. Vertidub, maybe not saying that right, is a word that roughly translates, according to this translation, to the tree extractor. Comes from a word meaning to twirl, and a tree or an oak. Is the German Baumdrache or Holzkrummhack. Vertigor, the mountain leveler, answers to the various other names. In other words, this is a person who is taking down trees, but also, as we'll see, is taking down mountains. All right.
Take me to live with you.
Gladly I would have taken you, Prince Ivan, replied the giant. But now I have very little longer to live. As soon as I have pulled up all these trees by the roots, instantly will come my death.
More bitterly still did the prince weep as he rode on farther and farther on. By and by he came to where the giant Vertigor was and made the same request to him, but he replied,
Gladly I would have taken you, Prince Ivan, but I myself have very little longer to live. I am set here, you know, to level mountains. The moment I have settled matters with these you see remaining, then I will my death come.
Well, Prince Ivan burst into a flood of bitter tears and rode on farther. And long, long did he ride. At last he came to the dwelling of the sun's sister, and she received him into her house, gave him food and water, and treated him just as if he'd been her own son. The prince now led an easy life, did he not before? He's a prince. But it was all no use. He couldn't help being miserable. He longed so to know what was going on at home. He often went to the top of a high mountain and thence gazed at the palace in which he used to live. And he could see that it was all eaten away. Nothing but the bare walls remained. And then he would sigh and weep. Once, when he returned after he'd been thus looking and crying, the sun's sister asked him, "What makes your eyes so red today, Prince Ivan?" The wind has been blowing in them," said he. The same thing happened a second time. And then the sun's sister ordered the wind to stop blowing. And again, a third time, did the Prince Ivan come back with a blubbered face. This time, though, there was no help for it. He could not make such an excuse, and he had to confess everything. And then he took to entreating the sun's sister to let him go, that he might satisfy himself about his old home. Well, she would not let him go, but he went on urgently entreating. So at last he persuaded her, and she let him go away to find out about his home. But first she provided him for the journey with a brush, a comb, and 2 youth-giving apples. My favorite thing in folklore, where it's like 2 pieces of mundane crap, and then the most powerful magic item in human history. I got you a ball of twine. That's half fuzz, but a drop of water in a leaf, and a piece of a rock that whatever you hit it with, they'll die and be gone forever. Just in the end there. However old anyone might be, let him eat one of these apples and he would grow young again in an instant. I mean, thanks for the brush and comb. They're kind of doing the same job. Do you have any more of those apples? Well, Prince Ivan came to where Vertogor was. There was only just one mountain left. He took his brush and cast it down on the open plain, and immediately there rose out of the earth, goodness knows whence, high, ever so high mountains, their peaks touching the skies, and the number of them was such that there were more than the eye could see. And Vertogor rejoiced greatly and blithely recommenced his work. Now this I didn't expect. I assumed it was just kind of coincidence that when he finished with the mountains he would die, but apparently it's literally like if more mountains appear, he lives long enough to deal with it. After a time, Prince Ivan came to where Vertodub was and found that there were only 3 trees remaining there. If you're confused, Vertogor is the mountain one. Vertodub is the tree one. They're both giants. I was confused when I first read this because apparently I didn't read well. And found that there were only 3 trees remaining. So he took the comb and flung it on the open plain, and immediately from somewhere or other there came a sound of trees. And forth from the ground arose dense oak forest, each stem more huge than the other. Vertodub was delighted, thanked the prince, and set to work uprooting the ancient oaks. By and by, Prince Ivan reached the old woman and gave them each an apple. They ate them and straightway became young again. So they gave him a handkerchief. You only had to wave it, and behind you lay a whole lake, which we saw in the Baba Yaga stories too. At last, Prince Ivan arrived at home, and out came running his sister to meet him, caressed him fondly. "Sit down, my brother," she said. "Play a tune on the lute while I go and get dinner ready." How long was he gone? Wasn't she like just born? The prince sat down and strummed away on the lute. Then there crept a mouse out of a hole and said to him in a human voice,
"Save yourself, prince. Run away quick. Your sister has gone to sharpen her teeth."
Well, Prince Ivan fled the room, jumped on his horse, and galloped away back. Meantime, the mouse kept running over the strings of the lute. They twanged, and the sister never guessed that her brother was off. And when she'd sharpened her teeth, she burst into the room, and lo and behold, not a soul was there, nothing but the mouse bolting into its hole. The witch waxed wroth, ground her teeth like anything, and set off in pursuit. Worming Hall says she has oranges that make her older. Lizzie Rose says, how does the sister know who she is? These ones in particular are not concerned about those kind of continuity problems. You always see a bit of that in folklore, but these two really stand out for just no. Like, what was his plan? Why did he even go back if he could see everything was eaten? Prince Ivan heard a loud noise and looked back. There was his sister chasing him, and so he waved his handkerchief, and a deep lake lay behind him. While the witch was swimming across the water, Prince Ivan got a long way ahead. But on she came faster than ever, and now she was close at hand. Vertidub guessed that the prince was trying to escape from his sister, so he began tearing up oaks and strewing them across the road. A regular mountain did he pile up. There was no passing by for the witch, so she set to work to clear them. She gnawed and gnawed, and at length contrived by hard work to bore her way through. But by this time Prince Ivan was far ahead, and on she dashed in pursuit, chased and chased, just a little more, and it would be impossible for him to escape. But Vertigor spied the witch, laid hold of the very highest of all the mountains, and pitched it down all of a heap on the road, and flung another mountain right on top of it. While the witch was climbing and clambering, Prince Ivan rode and found himself a long way ahead. And at last the witch got across the mountain, and once more set off in pursuit of her brother. By and by she caught sight of him and exclaimed,
"You shan't get away from me this time!"
And now she is close, and now she's going to catch him. And at the very moment Prince Ivan dashed up to the abode of the Sun's sister and cried, "Sun, Sun, open the window!" And the Sun's sister opened the window, and the prince bounded through it, horse and all. And then the witch began to ask her brother might be given up to her for punishment. Well, the Sun's sister would not listen to her, nor would she give him up. Then the witch said,
"Let Prince Ivan be weighed against me, to see which is the heavier. If I am, then I'll eat him. But if he is, then let him kill me."
Well, this was done. Prince Ivan was the first to get into one of the scales, and then the witch began to get into the other, but no sooner had she set a foot in it than shot up Prince Ivan in the air, and that with such force that he flew right up into the sky and into the chamber of the Sun's sister. But as for the witch snake, she remained down below on earth. I see that chat had the same reaction to this ending that I did, which was, what? I'm sorry. Why is this happening? Wolf howling at the moon. Hello. Yes, finally catching a stream. It's very good to see you. Rory's maniacal witch. Rory's maniacal witch is born by how hot it is in here. He's going insane. Also, she's a witch. Sure. But at no point was it mentioned she was a snake. So, it's interesting to introduce key character points in the last sentence of the story. It's an interesting choice. It definitely gives vibes of, like, Christianity, right? You know, Adam and Eve, witch around, snake around the earth, and everybody else goes up to heaven. I don't know what either of these stories are about, to be honest. Sometimes I have some insight. I hope someone comes into my comments and has theories and so on, because they are truly odd. They feel old. You know what I mean? Like, the older a tale is, the less concerned it is with making any kind of sense. It's something I've noticed. And maybe that's a good thing. It definitely makes them interesting. I know that's not the whole story. Like, you know, some very old tales have a great, clear kind of through line and narrative, like I would say the Odyssey and so on. But, like, in general, you know, when you get to really, really old tales, they really just don't. Oh, hello, Zombie Wolf. Good to see you. It's been a while. Lizzie Rose says this story was all left turns and left turns only. Yeah. What a truly bizarre story indeed. All right. Well, it is a million degrees. So as I said, I am going to check out and turn on my air conditioning. You folks are welcome to theorize in the chat when I have the exit window on. I know I missed a lot of people when I was doing my greetings, and I'm going to miss a lot saying goodbye. So what I will say is I hope you guys enjoyed the stories. I certainly appreciate the company and the folks that linger around and behind and watch. But everybody, everybody who joined, I hope you had a good time. As for me, I'll keep the fire warm. Boy, that really rings hollow right now. Zombie Wolf, Lizzie Rose, GS, Uncle Kitty, Genera, I think I saw for a little bit, and so on. You folks have yourself a good sleep.